Pluto, a distant and cold world. In the 1994 children's show, The Magic School Bus, we find the class on a field trip to the outer reaches of the solar system. The character Arnold has the misfortune of his cousin, Janet, accompanying them. Throughout the episode, Janet annoys, and nearly kills, everyone in the pursuit of physical proof. On Pluto, all of her stuff she collected spills out and she refuses to leave without it, because clout is important. Arnold, now fed up with his cousin, responds in a very rational and measured way, by pulling off his helmet and flash freezing. They get Arnold onto the bus, and he's later seen back on Earth alive and well. Although exposure to the Plutonian environment gave him a cold for some reason, personally I would be a lot more concerned about that. This all raises the question, would Arnold have survived, and what would have happened to him in real life? To answer this question, we'll have to look at the two biggest factors affecting Arnold, vacuum and temperature. Cosmic rays would normally be a concern, but the limited amount of time they spend outside the bus makes this a non-issue. Also, it's magic. Temperature. In the show, Arnold is flash frozen. This might make sense considering the surface temperature on Pluto is below minus 203 degrees Celsius, or minus 382 degrees Fahrenheit. However, this is a very Earth-centric mindset. Space doesn't actually have a temperature unless looking at it at the largest possible scale. Temperature is simply how much energy matter has, which affects how much it's moving. Hot things have higher molecular motion than cold things. On Earth, the dominant form of heat transfer we experience is through convection, the matter that is the air around us colliding with us and transferring energy, either making us hotter or making us colder. In space, the dominant form of energy transfer is radiation, thermal energy being emitted from an object as electromagnetic waves, in the case of Arnold's body, infrared. Pluto does have an atmosphere, however it's so thin it's about the same as being in low Earth orbit just above 100 kilometers, so convection wouldn't happen on Pluto fast enough to be noticeable. So Arnold taking off his helmet would need to radiate a ton of heat quickly to flash freeze, which isn't happening. Arnold is also shown staying standing, which would have helped his situation if this were real. If he had fallen down and his face touched the surface, his skin would have come into contact with very cold matter. Imagine cooling a rock with liquid nitrogen, then putting your skin on it. You would expect to receive ice burns within a few seconds. So, had Arnold fallen over, his face would have been in for a really rough time. The moisture in his skin might have flash boiled, creating protection for a brief moment due to the Leidenfrost effect, but yeah, ice burns. Pressure. The next and more problematic thing affecting Arnold is pressure. Since the surface of Pluto is basically a vacuum, Arnold would have suddenly found a number of unfortunate effects upon removing his helmet. He would lose consciousness in as little as 9 seconds and be dead in under 2 minutes. Fortunately for him, it looks like he was only exposed to vacuum for around 15 to 20 seconds between the time he took off his helmet and got back on the bus. I added a few seconds to account for reaction times and pressuring the bus. This would have been survivable, if not unpleasant. In 1966, a NASA technician named Jim LeBlanc was testing a spacesuit prototype in a vacuum chamber when his airline became disconnected. The chamber was repressurized and help got to him in about 25 seconds. He walked away from the experience with just ear pain and recalled the last thing he remembered before passing out was feeling the moisture on his tongue start to boil. So, where does this leave Arnold? Yes, Arnold would have survived. The extent of his injuries depend on a few things. If he had inhaled or held his breath before removing the helmet, he might have suffered lung trauma. If he was breathing normally, the air would have been pulled out of his lungs and less chance of damage. He would have felt the moisture on his eyes and tongue boil, and he would have suffered anything from an ear squeeze to full eardrum ruptures. There was also a good chance he may have developed a nosebleed once being revived due to capillary ruptures in his nose, but this more depends on individual anatomy and the speed of depressurization. He depressurized very rapidly, so I would say a good chance of that happening. He might have also developed black eyes as well, for the same reason. If he had taken off his helmet and stayed there with no assistance for a prolonged time, his outcome would have been a lot different. As the hours passed, the moisture in his tissue would boil away and he would radiate his thermal energy, eventually becoming freeze-dried. If Arnold had done this on the moon Titan, he would have suffered frostbite pretty fast, as it does have a thick atmosphere that's colder than the coldest Arctic winters. If he had done it on Mercury, the thermal energy from the sun would have rapidly overheated and burned him, causing far greater issues. If he had done it on Venus, it would have been very unpleasant to witness and 100% fatal after even a second. So, in a way, he actually chose the best location to traumatize his cousin.